Yes, Tom Higgins replaces interim head coach Jim Popp, who handled both the coaching and the GM duties last year after firing Dan Hawkins early in the season.
All right, with more on the new coach, we throw the ball over to our Sean Coleman and our resident football expert, Montreal Gazette sports writer, Herb Zurkowsky.
But first, let's hear from the new man in charge, Tom Higgins.
Jim Popp, one of the best GMs in North America. There is no challenge whatsoever. The general manager, I work with, but for, and I know what the chain of command is. We will be working together, and I can tell you over the last couple of days, it could not have been better.
Well, that's the voice of the newest head coach for the Montreal Alouettes, Tom Higgins. For his expert analysis, we bring in the man who broke the story from the Montreal Gazette, Herb Zurkowsky. Herb, you've been covering football since the days of the leather helmet.
Thank you.
Have you ever seen a hiring announced via conference call like this?
Never. I've never seen it in all my years covering football. Look, I understand what the logistics were at work here. You have a general manager who's in North Carolina. You have the owner who was in Florida attending Board of Governors meetings. But you had a head coach in Calgary. All you had to do was put him on a plane to Montreal, even if he's the only guy at the press conference. Every TV station in the city would have had visuals of the guy. Now you're talking to the guy on the phone. It just makes no sense. Again, the Alouettes just don't know how to publicize, how to market their brand, and they keep falling flat time after time after time. You wonder why their stadium's empty? This is why.
Oh, you have some harsh words there. Tom Higgins, 30 years CFL experience, twice named Coach of the Year, CFL Grey Cup to boot, and yet despite a resume like that, Herb, you're not a big fan of the hiring.
Well, I just don't know how the hiring's going to work with Jim Popp. You have a general manager who wanted the job. You have a general manager who wasn't involved in the selection process. You have a general manager who didn't pick the head coach. You have a head coach who inherits a coaching staff. I've never seen any of this at work. It makes no sense. So how will the two guys, Tom Higgins and Jim Popp, work out? That remains to be determined.
Well, let's follow that up because Jim Popp was passed over for the head coaching position. So what does this mean now for the future of Popp and the Alouettes front office in general?
Well, I'm concerned, obviously. He's going into the last year of his contract as a general manager. The longer that festers, the more he's going to be considered a lame duck general manager. The more guys like me during the season will keep bringing up the fact that you're a lame duck general manager. What's happening with your contract? So if I was Bob Wettenhall, I would sign him to an extension sooner rather than later. They lose this guy, they're in trouble.
All right, we'll talk about lame ducks with the Alouettes. One name that always comes to mind with me in the last year anyways, Dan Hawkins, hired last year right around the same time. 3 months to the season. He never seemed to get the players in the locker room on his side. Is Higgins going to get the support of the locker room, or are they going to maybe stay more towards the Popp side?
You know, the one thing I like about Tom Higgins is at least he has professional experience, which Dan Hawkins did not. The thing that concerns me about Tom Higgins from everybody that I'm talking to is this is a guy that can't make a decision. As the head coach, you got to be ready to push the button. You got to be ready to push the envelope. I don't know that he can do that.
Tom Higgins, known as a defensive coach, and right now there's no offensive coordinator for the Montreal Alouettes. Any candidates for that list? What are we looking for in terms of potential hires?
Well, there's not many guys at this late date. We're just about in March, so that's the problem too. They're behind the ball. There's a guy like Doug Sams who was in Edmonton, who once upon a time was an Alouettes assistant coach. A guy like Rick Warman, who worked with Tom Higgins. Guys, he's going to look for somebody, I would think, that he worked with, that he can rely on, who's close to him. But he's going to have to do it sooner rather than later, of course.
I know they don't have a lot of coaching experience, but I'm sure a lot of Alouettes fans would see guys like Calvillo, Cahoon back on the sidelines. Any chance those players get involved with this coaching staff?
I know that Jim Popp reached out to Ben Cahoon, who does at least have coaching experience at BYU.
Yeah.
The problem with a guy like Anthony Calvillo, he's not going to do it this year. He wants to take a summer off. It's very difficult to go from player to professional coach immediately. You got to cut your teeth somewhere else, and the CFL is not the place where you cut the teeth.
All right, and last question here, Herb. New quarterback, new head coach. I know we're far away from the season, but what's your early diagnostic? What do you think this season's going to behold for the Alouettes?
I'm glad that Ottawa, an expansion team's in their division. Let's just
positive.
leave it at that. That's not positive. I think this is a team that's going to struggle. I really do. They're repatriating too many guys. I think that Toronto and Hamilton are ahead of them, and they're going to be lucky that they have Ottawa in their division.
Well, a new head coach for the Alouettes, a new quarterback for the Owls, but as always, the great Herb Zurkowsky. Thanks, Herb.
Thank you.